Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jordan Brantley Pruitt, and I serve as the Director for Special Events with the Office of Alumni Relations at the University of Tennessee. We are so excited to have you all with us today as we get ready to talk about how to secure implementation and what you need to know. And we have two distinguished guests and panelists with us today. One, a friend of mine who works at UT, and then another great UT alum that we've got with us, and we're going to introduce them now. We're going to start with Kevin White, who is a proud alumnus of UT with a business degree in finance. For the last 30 years, Kevin has specialized in helping companies create, design, and implement successful retirement plans for their employees. Providing the tools necessary for the average American worker to take the mystery out of retirement planning and make a difference in their lives is one of his greatest rewards. We're excited to welcome Kevin to the chat today. Kevin, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And now for the queen herself, Michelle Geller. She serves as the Senior Director of Gift Planning at UT Knoxville. In this role, she works primarily with donors who have or are considering making a legacy gift to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Michelle, who has worked in the institutional advancement for 15 years, enjoys working with individuals and families on developing strategies to accomplish their philanthropic goals through a variety of gift vehicles. Prior to her tenure in institutional advancement, Michelle served as a lobbyist in Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C. for GSP Consulting, now with Dwayne Morris Government Relations and Blank Rome Government Relations. So super happy to have Michelle with us today as well. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Jordan. Hi, Kevin. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you guys for spending some time with us and sharing your expertise. Kevin and Michelle have prepared a presentation, so we are going to share our screen so you all can enjoy that with them as they walk through step by step. I do want to start by saying that if you have any questions for Michelle or Kevin throughout their presentation, we'll take all of those questions at the end of the presentation today. You can put those in on the comment section of any of the streaming platforms that you're watching from today, and we will hold those all until the end and give them some time at the end to answer any questions you may have. So I'm going to step away and Kevin, turn it over to you. And thank you again for being here with us today.
Well, thanks, Jordan. I really appreciate it. I do have to make one other introduction because I've been doing virtual presentations now for at least 3 years, and he always talks, and his name is Lenny, and he is my 100-pound Rottweiler mix, basically. But so usually that happens, so it's going to happen, but let's not put too much pressure on him, because if you can see me right now, this is his collar. It's a Checkerboard collar if you're listening. So he's a great dog and I love him. So what we're going to be talking about today is the Secure 2.0 Act. And let me give you some background. So as more and more American employers move away from offering pensions, 401ks and similarly structured retirement plans have risen in popularity. The biggest problem with relying on 401k plans to supplement Social Security benefits is that many people simply don't have access to employer-based retirement plans. The data is clear that having access to workplace retirement plans is key. According to a 2023 AARP study, Americans are 15 times more likely to save for retirement if they do so at work. However, there is no requirement for companies to offer a defined benefit or a defined contribution plan. Those that don't tend to be small and medium-sized businesses that are deterred by these setup costs and administrative burdens that come along with it. The result, which is also from another AARP 2022 study, that 57 million Americans still lack access to workplace-sponsored retirement plans. So to give you some context, back in 2019, Congress passed the first SECURE Act. SECURE is an acronym that stands for Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement. And it was an attempt to reform the U.S. retirement system. Among other changes, the law made it easier for small businesses to set up 401k plans and provide tax credits to employers who offered 401k auto enrollment features. But the critics said this reform didn't go far enough. So now, in December 23rd, 2022, Congress passed the Appropriations Act of 2023. Inside of that large bill was the Secure 2.0 Act of 2022. So this act was very popular and bipartisan across the board because it basically filled in a lot of the gaps that were missing from the original Secure Act. There are several provisions. As a matter of fact, there's 90 of them, and I'm not going to go through them all. But the overarching theme is threefold: improve access to retirement plans, increase savings for Americans, and ease administrative burdens. Like most major legislation, numerous questions will need to be answered for that to move forward. So change the slide. Now, I know you're squinting your eyes, and I don't want you to read this PowerPoint, but I did it to show you the breadth and the depth of this act, and to kind of give you an idea of what we're dealing with as someone who works in the retirement plan industry. So if you'll notice on the left-hand side, there are new provisions for just defined contribution plans. Those are just 401k plans within companies, defined benefit plans, which are pension plans, and then a combination of both, defined benefit and also defined contribution. And if you also notice, they're effective on 2023, this year, 24, 25, and 26 and beyond. And those in the red that you can't read are the ones that we still need guidance on. So to kind of give you an idea, if you step back, this was a huge bill, and it's going to make a lot of very positive changes, but there's a lot of work to be done. As a matter of fact, record keepers will probably be spending millions of dollars to make sure that this all comes into place. Next slide, please. All right, and so I'm not going to go through all 90, but I did select some provisions that might be advantageous to talk about. So again, under the idea of granting more access and savings, the first thing I wanted to talk about was improved tax credit for startup plans. So let's kind of back up, and I mentioned this in the beginning. Companies with small businesses with 50 or less than 100, the main thing kind of getting them not to set up a 401k plan was the administrative cost, the cost in setting one up. So what the Secure 2.0 Act did was actually increase the amount of tax credit that was available to 100% qualified startup cost for the first 3 years to an annual maximum of $5,000. So if you have a company with 50 people or less, you can basically have all the administrative cost, or most of it, taken care from a tax credit standpoint. That rule was 50%, now it's 100%. Now, if you have 51 to 100 employees, that credit reduces to the original 50%. Now, what's also new is a new tax credit for defined contribution plans, employer contributions, up to $1,000 per employee with FICA wages less than $100,000. So they can not only get a tax credit for setting up the plan for the next 3 years, but over a 5-year basis, if you're 50 employees or under, for the first $1,000 per employee making less than $100,000, you also get a tax credit for that. And if you're between 51 and 100 employees, you get 100% for the first 2 years, 75% the next year, 50 and 25% on year 5. So a great start into creating ways for companies to no longer have excuses to put together a 401k plan based off of cost and to bite into a little bit of that 57 million Americans that don't have access. Next slide, please. This one's also interesting. The requirement for new 401k and 403b plans to include auto-enroll and auto-escalate. So let's back up a second. A 401k plan is for companies, corporations. 403bs are for nonprofits, for educational institutions, churches, that sort of thing. They're fairly similar. So in a normal 401k plan that doesn't have auto features, when you become eligible to be able to participate in the plan, you go into a meeting, you register, and you determine how much you're going to put into the plan. And there might be a matching contribution associated with it. And you actually proactively opt into the plan. So the participation rates nationally, don't quote me on this, but they range anywhere from 30% to 60% in an opt-in arrangement. So if you have 100 employees, depending on the situation, only 30 to 60% of those are actually opting in to get into the retirement plan. So here is what auto enrollment is. So auto enrollment is different in that you are automatically put into the plan and you opt out of it. And so what we're finding, and this has been years and years of research, has shown that auto enrollment has a participation rate of 80s to 90%. And what we're finding is that the stick rate is really high. For whatever reason, that positive inertia that's there, people are not opting out. So the fact that the Congress decided to make this a requirement for all new 401ks is tremendous because they've seen the data, evidently. So if you notice on the right-hand side, this is effective starting January 1, 2025, and it is not optional for new retirement plans. Now, current 401k and 403b plans are grandfathered from this, but let me give you kind of a little bit of description of what this is. So initial auto enrollment amount must be at least 3%, but not more than 10%. Each year, that amount increases by 1% until it reaches 10%, but not more than 15%. So the auto enrollment's at 3%, and then the auto increase incrementally increases automatically 1% each year. Now, there's some exclusions here. If you have the provision for small businesses less than 10 people, or if it's a new business, like within the first 3 years, or church plans or governmentals, they're not required to do this. So this is an interesting new one because what it is, it's going to create not only that access, but that ability using positive inertia to get people in retirement plans and saving for their future. Next slide, please. Employees can receive matching contributions for repaying their student loans. This has been a topic of conversation for a few years now, but Secure Act 2.0 has made this available. So the bottom line is, when let's say that you have a company and a 25-year-old comes to work for you and they have $40,000 of student loan debt. So what tends to end up happening is that they've got a new job, they've got rent, they've got other utilities that, and their compensation is not enough to both pay down their student loan debt and also put money into the retirement plan. And so 10 years goes by, they're 35 and they just start putting money into the retirement plan. So if you ask any financial advisor, the key to success when it comes to retirement plan savings is save early and save often. And it's a good idea to start at 10%, And so the earlier using the time value money and using compounding is going to get you where you need to be. And unfortunately, those that have a lot of student loan debt, they start late. So what the Secure Act 2.0 allowed is for companies to, if you pay down on your debt, the company will put in a matching contribution into the retirement plan for you. So the rules for the matching must be made the same rate and vest under the same schedule as other matching contributions. Employee must otherwise be eligible to receive matching contributions. All employees eligible to receive regular matching contributions must be eligible for the student loan payment match. Now, this is optional, and it's effective starting January 1, 2024. Next slide, please. So non-highly compensated participants can contribute into a PLESA. Now this is new, and so this one in the next slide will demonstrate what Congress is trying to do to allow for participants to have access to their money inside of 401 retirement plans without the penalties in a kind of an emergency status. So Financial Planning 101 tells us you need an emergency fund to take care of any unexpected expenses. This is a way to help contribute to that. So allows a defined contribution plan to offer non-highly compensated participants. Non-highly compensated is defined at anybody under 150,000, at least this year anyway. An opportunity to contribute to a pension-linked emergency savings account. It's a PLESA, okay? And the rules are the maximum contribution is $2,500 or a lower amount set by the employer. Once the account balance reaches $2,500, no further contributions may be made to the balance falls below $2,500. Plan must permit at least one withdrawal per month and at least 4 per year with no fee or penalty. Contributions count toward annual deferral limit. Eligible for employer match. Match is invested in the participant's retirement account. So this is effective January 1, 2024 and is optional. All right, here's another one. This is also optional, but not as flexible, but it's called emergency savings, but it's an in-service emergency savings withdrawal option, which means you're still working for the company, and this is available for 401ks, 403bs, governmental 457bs, but it's not required. And it's simply this: you may withdraw up to $1,000, not subject to any early withdrawal penalty. Distribution may be repaid within 3 years. One distribution is allowed per year. And if the account is not rebuilt, either through repayment of the prior distribution or making contributions equal to the distribution, no additional distributions are available for 3 years. So a little bit more stringent and less money available, but something to kind of show you that Congress is wanting people to have access to 401k money, all but a limited amount for emergencies. Next slide. Okay. Increases catch-up limit for participants ages 60 to 63. So in a retirement plan today in 2023, you can put up to the maximum deferral limit, which is $22,500. If you are over the age of 50, you can put in an additional catch-up contribution of $7,500 for a total of $30,000 a year if you're over the age of 30. So what this does is that it increases the catch-up contribution limit for those from age 60 to 63. That looks like 3 years, but it's actually 4 years: age 60, 61, 62, and 63. And so it allows you to put in a catch-up contribution that is the greater of $10,000 or 150% of the regular limit. So for example, the current limit is $7,500, 150% equals $11,250. Now, this is going to be coming into effect January 1st, 2025, and it is not optional. But if it was today, right, if it was available today and you were 60 years old, you can, instead of putting in $7,500 into the retirement plan, you can put in $11,250. Now, there are something called simple retirement plans. Those are more IRA driven and don't have quite the planning and testing capabilities that a 401k plan does, but it is good for really small companies. And as you can see, the limits there are smaller. Next slide, thank you. So not only do we want to give access to participants, we want to encourage companies to put more money in, but we also want to get the long-term part-time employees into the plan. So in a normal 401k plan, you are typically not eligible for the 401k benefit unless you work 1,000 hours. That's typical inside of retirement plans. So this rule basically is trying to get long-term part-time employees into the plan based off of their years of service. So the original Secure Act in 2019 put in a 3-year rule. That is changing to 2 years. So eligible employees will enter under the first Secure Act's 3-year rule in 2024 and begin entering under the 2-year rule in 2025. We can skip the rest of that, basically go on to the next page. All right, administrative provisions. So let's talk a little bit about this and RMDs. So what are RMDs? Those are required minimum distributions. Required minimum distributions is very simple if you think about it this way. So when you go into a retirement plan and you put in what we call tax deferred money or pre-tax money, it comes out of your paycheck tax-free, it grows tax-free, compounds over time, and the idea is that when you retire, you take it out and you're also taxed at the very end. So meaning that the bill is due to the taxman, right? And so the RMDs are basically the government's way to say, hey, we need to collect our taxes. So the original Secure Act in 2019 extended the requirement from 70.5 to 72, but Secure Act 2.0 increased that to beginning the age of 73 in 2023 for participants and IRA owners who turned 72 on or after January 1st, 2023. RMD age will then remain 73 until December 31st, 2032, of which it'll then turn to 75. To make that a whole lot easier in that word salad I just said, based off of when you were born, your RMD would start at age 72 if you were born in 1950 or earlier. It would be 73 if you were born between 1951 and 1959, and 75 if you were born 1960 or later. Now, there was also another change that's not on this slide. That was more of it just made sense. So if you have a Roth IRA, you didn't have to worry about required minimum distributions, because what a Roth is that instead of doing tax deferral where you're doing pre-tax money and it's growing and then you're taxed at the end, a Roth is that you are taxed on the front end and then the back end is not taxed, right? So in a Roth IRA, you didn't have required minimum distributions because there was no need to. But inside of 401k plans, there was still a requirement to do so if you had a Roth solution in there. Now, that changed. So with this rule, that got rid of that requirement to do an RMD on Roth. And then lastly, on RMDs, it reduced the penalty. There was a very severe penalty if you missed doing a required minimum distribution of 50%. That got reduced to 25%. So if your required minimum distribution was $20,000 before, your penalty, if you missed it, was $10,000. Now it's reduced to 25%. And if you missed the RMD and it's corrected within the correction window, the tax is reduced further to 10%. I think that's good news for everybody. Okay. So now certain catch-up contributions are subject to a Roth treatment. This is another one of those descriptions, kind of a word salad, and I'm going to try to make it easy for you. So the bottom line is when you put in money into a retirement plan, typically if you do a pre-tax contribution, right, your catch-up contribution is also pre-tax, right? And so, for example, kind of going back over it, if you put in your $22,500, you're over the age of 50, and you've already put that in, and now you're putting in the additional $7,500 that you can put in as a catch-up contribution. Typically, that's all pre-tax if you did it on the front end. What this is saying is that if you make over $145,000 last year, this year your catch-up contribution has to be a Roth contribution. If you made less than $145,000 last year, your Roth contribution still could be pre-tax. That's what all of that is saying on that slide. It is not optional, so it's a mandatory thing, and it's going to start January 1, 2024. Okay, defined contribution plans to provide option for employer matching Roth contributions. So this is really interesting as well, and it's taxing a little bit on the record keeping and payroll companies out there. So again, even if you were in a 401k plan and you put in a pre-tax or a Roth contribution out of your paycheck, the matching contribution typically was always pre-tax. It's never had the ability to be a Roth post-tax contribution. But now it's permitted, starting when the act was enacted, and is optional, that it permits defined contribution plans to provide participants with the option of receiving employer matching or non-elective contributions in the Roth basis, which means employer match or like a profit sharing contribution could be done in a Roth. That is really interesting, and it is good. Go ahead and move this slide. All right, thank you. So where more guidance is needed, as I mentioned, there's over 90 provisions affecting retirement plans in 2.0, and there's lots of questions that we need guidance on as a provider, and everybody needs guidance on. So for example, defined contribution plans provide an option for employer matching Roth contributions. We need guidance needed on vesting impact of the Roth election. Employees can receive matching contributions for that should be repaying their student loans. We need guidance on the definition of a student loan eligible for a match, guidance on timing of the match and the procedure to claim. Certain catch-up contributions are subject to Roth treatment. Under that heading, we need a technical correction and verification of individuals with no FICA wages. And then lastly, requires new 401k and 403b plans to include auto enroll and auto escalate. What about plan mergers and spinoffs? So these are all really good questions we need more guidance on. All right, so this is where what does all this mean and could mean to you? So before we get kind of into the impact on planning, and before I hand it off to Michelle here in a second, let me read this. A very important statement. So the content contained in this presentation is intended for general information purposes only. It is not meant to constitute legal, tax, accounting, or investment advice. You should consult with your qualified legal, financial, or tax professional regarding your specific situation. Okay. So with that, there were some rules, RMD rules that I just went over, but also very important qualified charitable distributions that Michelle is going to enlighten us on. Michelle? Oh, you're on mute. There we go.
There. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining Kevin and I today. Before I get into my formal remarks, let me just say the excitement is building on Rocky Top. We're about a week away from the start of the new academic year, and campus is already buzzing, as you can probably imagine. As mentioned previously, my name is Michelle Geller, and I serve as the Senior Director of the Office of Gift Planning at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. And in this role, I primarily work with donors who have or are interested in making a legacy gift to the university. Now, there are many ways to make a legacy gift at UT Knoxville, but for today, I want to focus on a new type of legacy gift option that was created as a result of Secure 2.0. The Secure 2.0 Act expanded the use of the IRA qualified distribution, and in effect created a new gift opportunity for individuals interested in setting up a life income gift with a charitable organization. I know the term life income gift is not a common one, so let me explain. A life income gift is an arrangement that provides you or others with fixed income and leaves a legacy gift for the charity in the future. A great example of a life income gift that we commonly see at UT Knoxville is a charitable gift annuity, or it's also called a CGA in short. Accordingly, as a result of Secure 2.0, donors who are 70 and a half or older can now make a one-time election from an IRA of up to $50,000 to fund a charitable gift annuity. In doing so, an IRA account holder would be able to satisfy all or perhaps a portion of their required minimum distribution in a similar manner to the way the IRA QCD has been traditionally used, which is a tax-smart way to support philanthropic causes now. As a little refresher, a qualified charitable distribution allows individuals who are 70 and a half years or older to donate up to $100,000 total to one or more charities directly from a taxable IRA instead of taking their required minimum distribution. As a result, donors may avoid being pushed into a higher income tax brackets and prevent phase-outs of other tax deductions, though there are some limitations to this. With gift annuity rates higher than they've been in more than a decade, it's time to think about gift annuities as part of your charitable gift planning strategy. Not only annuities funded with a QCD, but also gift annuities funded with more traditional assets like cash and or appreciated securities. So for today's presentation, I thought it would be a good idea to do a side-by-side comparison of traditional and QCD funded annuities. So let's go ahead and take a look at the chart. You can flip back to that. Yes, there you go. So we're going to start by looking at donor age and comparing and contrasting charitable gift annuities that are funded by the traditional means, meaning, cash and or appreciated property, and those funded through a QCD. So when it comes to the traditional CGA, UT Knoxville complies by the UT Foundation gift acceptance policy. So for us, when we enter into contracts with individuals that want to set up these traditional CGAs, you have to be 60 or above in age. Consequently, when you look at the QCD funded CGA, we're not only complying with UT Foundation policy, we're also complying with this new statute, which has said that it's 70 and a half and above. With regards to maximum gift amounts, the UT Foundation has no maximum gift amount for a charitable gift annuity. However, we do have a minimum gift amount, which is $25,000. Oppositely, the QCD funded CGA is $50,000 maximum in the aggregate in one calendar year. So what I mean in the aggregate, it's an individual who is interested and who is philanthropically motivated can allocate up to $50,000 to set up one or multiple charitable gift annuities at one or multiple charities. Payment options also vary between the QCD funded CGA as well as a traditional. There is more flexibility with traditional CGAs in that donors have the option to take immediate payments, deferred payments, flexible deferred options, whereas on the QCD funded side, payments are required to begin no more than 1 year from the date of the gift itself to the charity. With regards to funding options, now taking a look into the assets as mentioned previously, once again, there's a bit more flexibility when it comes to a traditional CGA and ways to fund it. Oftentimes we see donors who give cash and or appreciated stock securities. Whereas the QCD funded CGA, it must come from the IRA assets and those assets alone. Taxation also varies. So with the QCD funded CGA, all payments are taxed as ordinary income, which is, we found sometimes a sticking point with some of our donors who are weighing the options. Whereas if you're using cash or appreciated property, part is tax-free income, part is ordinary income. When you're talking about appreciated property, you also are thinking about the part capital gain income as well. And then the eligible annuitants. So this was another interesting point when we were looking at the side-by-side comparisons. Traditional CGAs, we see donors that set them up for themselves sometimes, and themselves only. Sometimes it's the donor and the spouse. Sometimes a donor sets them up for their parent or even a sibling. So there's more flexibility, whereas with the QCD funded CGA, it can only be the donor and or their spouse. So it's a bit more stringent. With regards to charitable deductions, once the initial payment is made, there is a partial deduction for the year that that payment is made to start the CGA, where there is no charitable deduction with the IRA QCD funded CGA. I know it is alphabet soup here, so bear with me. CGA payments and the assignability clause. So with a traditional CGA, what does that mean? What is assignability? So that means sometimes, on occasions, you'll have individuals, CGA annuitants, that call the office and say, you know what, I no longer need or desire to have these quarterly payments come to me. I want to give it back to the charity. And they can opt to do that. With the QCD funded CGA, that is not an option. Once you enter into a contract to fund a CGA with those QCD monies, you must take the money. It is non-assignable. And then with regards to payout rates, UT Foundation complies or uses the American Council on Gift Annuity rates. And that's about 98% of charities out there utilize those rates. And there is no minimum. However, as the law currently stands, QCD funded CGAs have a minimum payout rate of 5%, which is fine right now because rates have been so great. However, they're cyclical, and if things change, particularly if it is a 2-life annuity and a spouse, one is a bit younger than the other one. So if you have a wife that is older than her husband and it's going to affect your rate, you have to be mindful of that if you're using those types of assets to fund it, and make sure that you're always getting a minimum payout rate of 5% or more. So these are some great options. We have, like I said, a variety of vehicles that our donors often rely on to make their philanthropic wishes impactful at the university. And given the Secure 2.0 changes, there is, one more option available to our donors, and it is a very good one. So thank you.
Okay. Just to continue with the bullet points, and we're getting close to the end here. So after the second bullet, some things that you might want to consider in talking to your financial advisor. Additional catch-up contributions at 60. Remember, that's 60 to 63. That begins in 2025. So that would be something from a planning perspective. The interesting part about employer matching contributions being designated as Roth accounts, that would be also something I would talk to your financial advisor about based off of their calculations and your current salary and wage, as to whether or not that makes sense. Now, one thing that I did not have a slide on but it was very interesting, is this fourth bullet down, and that's 529 counts with unused amounts can be set up as a Roth IRA for 529 beneficiaries. So this was new to me, and it's kind of interesting having run through all my 529s with all my kids. But But this is neat. So if you're familiar with 529 plans, it's a way to help save your parents or grandparents, to help save for kids' education with some tax benefits in there. Let's say you have a kid that decides not to go to school, and there's a lot of money in there. But if you take it out for reasons other than going to school, then there's the penalties involved. But this gives away up to $35,000 that can be put into a Roth IRA for the benefit of the 529 beneficiary, and give them a head start in their life from a retirement standpoint. And then lastly, if you're a business owner and you are not sponsoring a retirement plan, you might want to consider taking advantage of these new enhanced tax credits available to establish a new plan. So to finish up here, and if you can go to the next page. Before we get to questions, let me just kind of summarize. In summary, as you can see, why Secure 2.0 had a lot of bipartisan support. It effectively addressed the gaps that we have today in our U.S. retirement system by creating incentives to small businesses to set up 401k plans through enhanced tax credits, thus opening access to millions of Americans over time, using auto features to facilitate that positive inertia needed to drive higher and higher participation rates for participants, create more savings opportunities using Roth, those for the long-term part-time employees and those at 60 plus through catch-up contributions. And then, as we just talked about, enhanced RMD and qualified charitable distribution options. So I want to thank you for your time today. That's the end of the presentation, but we can open it up now for questions.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Michelle, for sharing your expertise with all of the viewers today. And if you were able to be on for the presentation or had to jump off or anything, or maybe you've listened today and thought this is really applicable for someone that you know, this presentation will live on our alumni.utk.edu website. If you go to the top, there is a section there for virtual events, and you can find all of the recordings from our previous virtual events, including this one, that will be added to that very shortly. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in from the audience. And while we're answering these, if anyone else has any additional questions, you can still type those into the comments as well. Our first question comes from Pamela. She said, can you clarify if the catch-up for 60 plus does not have to be an employer plan, but an IRA that is with an investment firm?
That is a good question, and one that I'm familiar with Secure 2.0, but it's so new that I am not expert in it. So let me research that and get back to you.
That sounds great. And Pamela also asked an additional question. And can the RMD be put into a DAF?
Michelle, would that be a question for you?
So to my knowledge, the RMD cannot be put into a donor advised fund, Pamela, but I will confirm that for a fact and get back to you.
Perfect. Well, those are the two questions that we had come through in the chat. So I can move forward here to the disclosure slide as well. And I will leave that up for a second, Kevin. But is there any other wrap up points or anything from either of you before we wrap it up today?
No, it was just absolutely a pleasure to be a part of Vol Nation. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Well,
absolutely.
Thank you, Kevin, as well. And we appreciate you giving your time and talent back to the university. It always is a light of our week when we get to engage with alums who are willing to give back their time and treasure and talent to us. And so we just appreciate you doing that and being a committed volunteer, and it means the world to us. So we appreciate you giving your time. Michelle, coordinating everything for this. We really appreciate that as well. And we will obviously be here. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to reach out to myself, Kevin, or Michelle, and we can definitely pass those questions to each other as everybody is needed. But like I mentioned, from here forward, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day. This, again, will be living on our website if you need to refer back to this recording at any time. So thank you, everybody, for your time today. We really appreciate it. And of course, we can't end without saying, go Vols.
Go Vols.